And welcome back to another episode of Debt Nation. We have with us again Mr. Smythe. He's calling in from Brisbane. Thank you, Mr. Smythe, for coming back in calling in from Brisbane. I know you're very busy. I know you've had a long day. You're always busy. You're flat trap. So thank you again for calling in, because we have a little bit of gloating to do, and we'll get to the gloating in a second. But it's also a very serious topic, and we don't want to, we don't want to take it too far, because what we are talking about is quite serious. So thank you, Mr. Smythe, for calling in again, and we appreciate that. How are you?
It's my pleasure still. I'm good, thanks. I'm very well.
Fantastic. Well, the story that we talked about last week, my sound was a bit off, but that's okay, because the ABC was watching our channel and they were watching our conversation, and they said, oh, damn, these two have got it right? And it's the oil crisis. Australia is at risk. We don't have petroleum reserves, sufficient petroleum reserves to survive a shock. I'll get right into that in a second, but I just want to talk about the last episode, because we wanted to have you on. You were very busy doing other things in a busy world. We wanted to have you on talking about Putin, talking about the Vatican City, talking about the Pope, the transfer of a picture, an etching, which has moved now from the Vatican to the Kremlin. Did you have anything, because we really wanted your expertise, did you have a comment on that story?
I have to admit that art history is not exactly my specialty, unlike your prior guest. But it's interesting that such a gift would be given by Francis to Putin. The sketching, the artwork in question, is a very old piece, which happened to be owned by Cardinal Henry of York, who was also the highest ranking English cardinal for a very long time, and was also the brother of one of the Jacobite pretenders to the English throne. But because he was the spare, rather than the heir. You know, when in European monarchies and medieval monarchies, you'd have an heir and a spare. He was the spare because he was the second son. He decided to devote himself to God, became a priest, became a bishop, and ultimately became a cardinal in the Roman Catholic Church. But the artwork that was given by Francis to Putin recently was actually in his possession, and may have actually been commissioned by him, given his custody over it at the time. The thing that interests me about it, and this wasn't so much from a financial point of view as it was from a historical point of view, almost hinting at a changing of the guard, as it were. You know, that was then, this is now. Because the view of it was basically a bird's eye view, as John would have explained. It was basically a bird's eye view of St. Peter's Square and the Basilica in the part of Rome that is known as Vatican City, which is its own sovereign state. I think you had something to say about that. One of the commentators on the earlier video had a gripe with your presentation or something?
Yeah, so one of the people, they put in a shock jock question, and they said that I was ignoring the fact and I was avoiding the fact that the Vatican is a city and it's its own separate entity. And they said, why are you focusing on Italian geography and Italian geopolitical problems when the Vatican is its own separate country within Italy? And I don't want to state the obvious. I mean, everybody knows that, but we don't know where this art is coming from. We don't know who technically owns the art. We just know that the Pope, and from an external person's perspective, someone who thinks about money laundering and talks about money laundering and knows a lot about geopolitical maneuvers, it's the Vatican is a sort of, you're washing those trades, you're washing that system. So this could be a gift from Rome, and they're utilizing the Vatican to talk to Moscow. That's what I was saying. I'm not ignoring the fact that that the Vatican is its own separate state and that Putin didn't visit a different country. That's not what I was saying. I mean, that person is wrong. I mean, have you got anything else to say on that piece? The historical consequence, because it was a huge move. This painting could have unlimited value, as our other guest John was saying.
The value of a lot of classical art is deemed priceless because it cannot be quantified in terms of its monetary value. The gifting of this piece by the Roman Pontiff to Putin suggests not just a changing of the guard in terms of art ownership, but also a move towards healing a rift between the Western powers and Moscow in a more abstract, no pun intended, way.
Absolutely. So we'll move on from that because we've defeated the trolls. The trolls are out of here. We know that we understand those notions, and those people have got to get out of here. We got to get those people out of here. Anyway, we talked last week. We had a show. We were talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and how Australia was failing. The ABC then comes out with an article a couple of days later and actually agrees with us. We have the article here. I'll just show it to our audience. So you can go to the ABC and you can see this article. Analysis, Iran tensions expose risk of Australia's short-term thinking. Updated Wednesday. We had the show on, I think it was on the Tuesday. Smythe, we were ahead on the ball on this one. Australia is not prepared for an Iran crisis. If an Iran crisis develops, Australia is exposed to petrol lines that are infinitely long, sky-high fuel prices. We do not have any reserves. The country's economy could be on the brink of collapse, and the government, going right back, has done nothing about this. For generations. What say you, Michael Smythe?
The scary thing still is that we were not the first people to draw attention to this. The trouble is, every time attention was drawn to this, it was smothered by some other news. When you asked me if I could have some time this weekend to discuss the fact that we were right, I actually did a very, very quick search. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do a very quick search. Type into Google, and this is Google, not even DuckDuckGo, which is infinitely better, by the way, but that doesn't matter right now. You type in oil shortage in Australia, those words, into your Google search bar, and you will find no less than 8 articles, I think I counted, just on the first page alone. Most out of those 8, at least half of those were independently written. One was actually from the United States Studies Center, and this was published. There were a report that was published at the end of last year, pointing this out. There have been other articles that have been saying, that we've read, which has been the reason why we've been saying we need to get our act together in terms of our petrol, diesel, and gas security. We made a treaty with the Netherlands towards the end of last year, which ABC did cover, but they didn't cover it on the front page. What the difference is now is because there was actually a very uncomfortably large chance of Iran being attacked by the US after the shooting down of that drone before Trump cancelled it at the last moment. They actually made it front page news, and they're not going to smother it this time. Well, I don't think they'll smother it this time because it connects to the whole fear-mongering of an American-Iranian conflict.
Yeah,
the thing is, we've been saying this for years.
Yeah, the drone
because we've been
was
reading this for years.
The drone was the tipping point because that we came within a hairline of what was Trump going to do. Was Trump going to retaliate against the Revolutionary Guard and Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader there in Iran? Was he going to take him out then and there? They'd committed an act of war, and if he did, Australia obviously initiating the alliance structure around the world, we would be drawn into this conflict. And we have to remember, this is what we said, about 20% to 30% of the world's fuel is flowing through that area, okay? And the Australian government has an infinite amount of land, infinite amount of time, infinite amount of money to build up our own strategic petroleum reserves and diversify our resources. Remember the wheat for fuel scandal and all of that riff-raff way back when? We could have been building up our own strategic energy policy, and we didn't. And now the ABC, they watch this show, they watch you and me, and they said, "Oh, wait, what's going on here? Yes, we're at risk." And you know why they did this is because they realized in their ivory tower that, holy, this could impact me and my life. And that's what we were saying. Iran and America came within a hairline of going to war, and that is crazy. A few quotes out of this article. According to the government's Australian petroleum statistics, Australia has 26 days of petroleum supply, 28 days of jet fuel, and 21 days of diesel. I mean, that is disgusting. That's disgusting. 26 days of petroleum, that the economy collapses in the first week because the government will hoard the rest for its own. So, great. So there's a war in Iran. We've had lots and lots of time to prepare, and bang, the economy collapses. What say you, Michael Smythe, there in Brisbane?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, we'll be lucky to, let's say 3 weeks at better case scenario of it. The government has within its powers and within its prerogatives the ability to take all civilian fuels to aid any war effort. So if we get cut off, I mean, you correctly pointed out the large amount of oil. You said, 30% goes through the Strait of Hormuz? Yeah,
it's somewhere they argue between 20 and 30, yeah.
Yeah. Well, even if it's 20%, it doesn't matter. The point is, we are stranded without it because we actually use the TAPIS price, which is from the Singaporean Straits Times Exchange, not the Sweet Texas Crude, which is from the NYMEX, the New York Mercantile Exchange. So we are in a very precarious position, even without the impending threat of an American war with Iran. And Khamenei knows, the current Supreme Leader Khamenei, he knows that if he pushes too far, he will be removed from power, and that will basically destroy any hopes of Iran contesting Saudi Arabian hegemony within the Islamic world. Because remember, Iran is a Shiite Islamic nation, whereas the vast majority of other Islamic nations are Sunni. So, as Iran is also not an Arab nation. Iran is a Persian nation. It's an Indo-European nation. It's not an Arab nation like Saudi is, or any of the other countries in the region. So, anyway, I digress. My point is that we should have been building this up. I mean, we've had people, to be fair, we've had people saying for a while now, for the past few years at least, that we need to work on building up our reserves and our capacity to refine oil ourselves. We have one refinery, which I believe is owned by BP. I'll have to check that. But one refinery in the entirety of Australia. That's not much.
We have no supply chain security. So there's a war in Iran. We're stuffed. Like, there's another quote here from the ABC article, which we were talking about. You were the only country to fail to meet our International Energy Agency obligation of 90 days of supply and oil stocks. That's That's 90 days and 28 days. That's a big difference, man. Come on. The Australian government is a laughing stock. It's a joke. It's a joke. It hasn't even got a month. And it's not. They didn't even give it. They got us the short month. It wasn't even the long month. It wasn't even the 31-day month. It was a 28-day month. This is a joke. These governments, you know why this is a joke? And you know why this really, really, really annoys me? Is because the government is so obsessed with international institutions and beholding to them and saying the UN, oh yeah, we got to get on board with the UN train. We've got to get on board with all these agencies. And it comes to a national security issue like our petroleum preserve, and bam! Oh, suddenly they can't find the time to actually live up to these international obligations that they say they always have to do it. Like there's people in Sydney now because of the Blue Mountains. There's people in Sydney that are getting the UN's dictating their flight paths and the height of the dam. I saw that on Sky News. So. The UN is happy to dictate in these areas, and Australia's happy to roll over and go, "Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. We'll take all these hits from all these international organizations." And then it comes to a matter of national security, and they give us 28 days. They give us 28 days, and they're supposed to be giving us at least, according to their own signatures, 90 days. This is disgusting. I'm absolutely angry. I am angry because the other thing is we're supposed to be a good ally for the United States, right? We're supposed to be in there gung-ho with America. But then how can we do that if our economy collapses? It's not like they don't have enough land. There's plenty desert out there. Just straight down, do it. It's salt pans, it's salt. Everybody knows that. Just do it, Australian government. Go, Michael.
Exactly. And there was actually an article on that first page of I was reading earlier before our podcast. They found, excuse me, this is from the Telegraph, and a British paper. Trillions of dollars worth of oil was found in the Australian outback. This was back in 2013. The highest estimate was 233 billion barrels worth of oil. That was the largest estimate. It was discovered by Link Energy to the stock exchange. It was based on 2 consultants' reports, and it was in the Arkaringa Basin in South Australia. So the lowest, by the way, estimate was 133 billion barrels of admittedly it's shale oil, but even so, it would be able, if we actually mined that and we refined it ourselves into petrol, into diesel, jet fuel, etc., we would have not only the ability to become a net oil exporter, but we would also have the potential to become a new energy superpower, even if we're just using the basic oil and not investing into diversified industries like solar or thorium or even classical nuclear like uranium.
Yeah, exactly. So we could become an energy superpower, and they can't give us 90 days of what they signed up for. So they signed up for 90 days. They gave us 28 days. We've got oil sitting underneath us. We've got oil in the Bering Strait. We've got oil up in Papua New Guinea. We can go get it. I mean, who's scared? Who's scared of the big bad wolf, right? I mean, let's just go get it. I mean, I'm not scared. Let's go get it. We have to play this. We have to play the game. We have to look after our people, look after our security interests, look after our economy. I mean, look after the economy. I mean, it's the Liberal Party, right? And isn't the Liberal Party all like, oh, we stand up for the economy. We are the party of the economy. And it's like, they've been in power for a long time. You can't just blame the Labor for this. If they haven't been able to build up more than 28 days of petroleum since Howard and forward, this is bad, man. This is not good. This is a dearth. This is a betrayal of the Australian people. 100%, it's a betrayal. And the ABC is watching this show, and that's why they wrote that article.
Mm-hmm. And it should be noted as well, the articles that they have written, the only one that they've let come to the surface is because, oh, Iran and America look like they're going to have a massive gunfight. They have let other articles be written before, but they've been given so little attention that no one has noticed except for experts and people who have interest in it, like us. You know, when we've got people even smarter than us saying there is a massive problem with our lack of fuel reserves, we've got a massive problem.
Yeah, absolutely. America has fixed this issue. Okay, they have
Trump. Sorry, that's what I was going to say. They've got Trump saying, you know what? We have the ability to transform. Sorry, let me do it this way. We have the ability to transform America into an energy superpower, and we don't need the Arabs anymore. Telling us how much we're going to pay for our petrol, and so forth and so forth and so forth. So, you know, I mean, this is a big change from when Obama was president, basically vetoed the Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah, he
just like, ooh.
You're right. You're right. He said, all right, eminent domain, get it out of the way. Let's just build the pipelines. Let's frack everything. Let's convert all the wheat into extra fuel. Let's build up the petroleum reserves. He said energy independence, energy neutrality. They've become an energy superpower. They could be a net energy exporter, which they're not going to really do because they're just going to use it for Fortress America. And Australia is sitting down here like the dumb kid of Asia. What are we? I mean, this is a joke. This is a joke. I'm not happy with it. America's petroleum reserves, because they're based off, I think it's 37% of petroleum and 29% natural gas. Renewable only comes from about 11%, nuclear power about 9%, and coal is about 14%. And then there's a whole bunch of other biomass, wind, solar, and all this other stuff. Australia should be moving. I had a lady on last night, right? And her father was in Chernobyl. Okay, he was one of the scientists in Chernobyl. Go back and watch that Ukrainian woman. She's beautiful and lovely, and she was a great chat. But her father was there, and she said, "Go nuclear, do it." Like, even though I was impacted personally, the empiricism and the scientific evidence says, be careful, but go for it. So we didn't do nuclear, and we haven't done our petroleum preserve, even to our international obligations. This is a tragedy, and this is the government screwing you over again. Because you know what they're going to do? We're going to have a war in Iran. This stuff's going to happen. The world's going to go, oh, it's all going. But then they're going to say, I'm sorry, economy. We're going to have to use this for our own purposes, and they're going to hoard it, and the people will be stuck out in the cold. Your cars won't work. Your heating won't work. They won't. Plastics stop. The international trade, all the imports stop. It all stops. Okay, if we had some sort of reserve up to 90 days, well, maybe the war would be over in 90 days. I mean, at least. And I mean, we should go far beyond that. You were just talking very, very rightly about the fact we could have energy independence here now, today, because we've got oil sitting underneath our feet, without we're not using. This just absolutely annoys me. It annoys the hell out of me. Sorry, Michael, I'm going off here.
No. You are right to be appalled. Anyone and everyone is right to be appalled by the sheer negligence that has been committed and perpetrated by governments of both sides of the spectrum on this. I was reading something that Senator Canavan, who is Resources Minister, said back in January. He did actually admit in January that fuel security was a problem. And he said that, 20 years ago, Australia produced enough petroleum to meet almost all our domestic needs. Okay, that was 20 years ago. That's not now. We need to fix it now. And I'm sure Senator Canavan is aware of that. But we need to...
We should get Senator Canavan on the show. What's his name? We should get him on the show. Come in on the show. Canavan. If you what? He's probably watching this right now. Come in on the show. We want to talk to you. You sound like the only smart person in the government.
In fairness, there are a few who are relatively intelligent.
Fraser Anning is all over this. Fraser Anning was all over this. Fraser Anning was out there warning people about this, and a few others. Yeah, you're right. Fraser knew all about this.
He did, because this was one of the main concerns that was brought to his attention both prior to his departure from One Nation and his joining with Katter and then his founding of his own party. He has been acutely aware of this for quite a while.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny, Michael, that the man who went and talked to the real people knew about the real issues?
Well, that's the thing.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? But this is the thing. That's why you had the American millionaire George Burns once say, if you ever want to have the country run well, talk to the taxi drivers and the hairdressers. Well, the people, actually, he said the people who cut hair, but I paraphrased that. But that's the thing. You talk to the people on the ground. You've got to talk to the forgotten people. You don't talk to them, you're going to have no idea, which is why I've always been about, remembering the forgotten people. Talk to them. Figure out what they need. The roofs over their heads, the food on their table, the money to pay their electricity bills, the fuel for their cars.
Exactly.
It sounds like common sense.
It's part of the RBA. It's part of the RBA charter. It's part of the defense charter. It's part of the government of what we do, and we outsource our security issues. Okay, so we say to the government, "Here's our taxes," and all we do is just hand over taxes, hand over fist, pay for everything, and then what do we get in return? We get 28 days of fuel. Thanks, government. Thanks a lot. Thanks very much, ScoMo, and thanks very much, John Howard, and thanks very much, Kevin Rudd, and Julia Gillard, and Tony Abbott, all of you. I mean, they did some good stuff, but on this issue, every single one delayed and pushed the can down the road and said, oh, I'm going to leave it another day because I'm just going to bet on peace. And then Trump comes along, and Trump plays hardball, and they're like, oh, actually, we kind of stuffed up. And the ABC, that's the ABC saying, we've kind of accidentally, might have accidentally just left the whole country on the precipice. But don't worry, Koshi's on TV. Toshi's a great guy. He's got he's a clown world hat on, and he's going to entertain you, and it's going to be great. So if you just turn on the TV and you can watch Koshi, everything will be fine.
It's depressing, isn't it?
It's not depressing. It's just how it is. Hey, look, the International Energy Program, it requires member countries to hold stocks equivalent of at least 90 days of net oil imports. So net oil imports is the important one there. That means that it's not supply trade driven, it's not demand driven, it's supply, right? It's on the supply side. And you rightly pointed out that our supply side mechanism, we don't even make our own fuel costs. It's all being done in Singapore, right? So tap is crude, which you point out. But the other international obligation that we have is to release stocks and share available oil in the event of a major supply disruption. And I just wanted to point out to the audience, who's the smartest audience in the world, they guys already all know all this sort of stuff. So, but anyway, the economic recessions normally follow oil price spikes, and so one of the really big ones was in 2007, 2006, when there was a massive demand-driven oil binge just before the housing boom, and that prices in America almost climbed to 140. Now we're looking at almost the same thing again, but the OPEC price and the world oil price have been a little bit distorted now because of the American shale energy boom. Michael, are we on the? Do we need to import this oil at high prices, or should we develop it here?
We should develop it here. I mean, that's the common sense answer. We should just develop it here. I mean, and obviously we can't just we can't shut off our imports overnight, unfortunately. But we need to start not just looking at, we need to start developing our oil reserves for ourselves. We need to increase the number of refineries we have in Australia. We need to diversify our energy mix. I know Tim hates that phrase. To be honest, I'm not going to lie. I hate it.
I don't know what you mean.
Seriously, we need to diversify our energy mix. We need to diversify it. We need to diversify not just your conventional non-renewables. You need to have nuclear power. You need to have, I'm going to sound like I'm flogging a dead horse here, but we need nuclear power, both uranium and thorium fueled. We need hydroelectric. We need to revamp hydroelectric. Snowy Mountain 2.0 would have been good 20 years ago, but by the time it's completed now, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, we need dam projects, and projects bring hydropower. That's for sure. And the other thing is, like, if we have more of these diversified energy sources, especially nationalized oil industry and a petroleum reserve, when another natural disaster hits, so the North Queensland is getting hit year after year after year of cyclones, right? I mean, I grew up there. I know how they are. They're devastating. I mean, they're natural. So for example, the rainforests, they accumulate too many weeds and too many vines and things, and they start choking the rainforest, and then bam, a cyclone will come through and it will clean that out. But sometimes it'll damage roofs and farms and things. So they're not good for some parts of the economy. They're good for some parts of nature. They're just natural, and people who live in Cairns and Townsville and Rockhampton and places, even down as far as Brisbane sometimes, but not really. You guys don't get up too far down there. These places get devastated, and they get fuel shortages all the time. And Australia can't react to that. It can't impact those prices and bring those prices down or push emergency fuel up or anything, because it's got none. It's got none. I know this for a fact, because when I was working in Parliament, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. I'm going to say it because I'm going to say it, but I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say it because it's propaganda, right? But the troops sometimes, and I'm not going to say specific cases because I don't want to get in trouble for this, but sometimes they don't really have mission statements, okay? So they go up there just as a PR piece, and they're shoveling stuff around, and the people are like, oh, look, the army's helping, but they don't have a mission statement. They're just there as propaganda, just there to make the general population feel good. And it's because they can't react. It's because the Australian government is abysmal. It's because the Australian government has failed the people. They're failing the people on a national security issue like this. What really the army could be utilized to bring emergency fuel up from these petroleum reserves and from safe and secure facilities and that you're talking about. And then, because America does this all the time. America did this in a major crisis. It did it in the Libya crisis. It did it in Hurricane Katrina. It did it in the Iraq War. It did it in Hurricane Harvey. It did it in Hurricane Isaac. It did it all across the hurricanes. All the hurricanes. It does it. And we don't do it. We don't look after our people because the government is incompetent on these issues.
Yeah, and eventually people are going to find out the hard way just how incompetent governments have been. And when that happens, there's going to be a lot of very, very angry people. I mean, we're going to be heading towards... actually, I'm not going to say that. That sounds overly pessimistic. But suffice it to say, you may start to see more than just occasional sporadic protests by people who are angry and upset that the government has let them down. You may end up seeing a lot more angry protests.
So you're saying different protests, because I already see a lot of angry protests. The Unshackled covers them all these climate weirdos and all that. So you're saying a different type of protest, an economic protest, a protest.
Absolutely, over lack of resources, lack of supplies, lack of food, lack of money, lack of fuel. This is the thing. I was talking to someone a few months ago, and he said to me that unless Sydney gets a hell of a lot of rain, the lights might well go out in Sydney because of the lack of energy, lack of water going through the Snowy Mountain hydro. He was saying that it was a worst case scenario, granted, but if that had actually eventuated, you'd have a lot of people very angry in Sydney, and they'd be looking for someone to blame, and they'd be looking for someone to hurt as a result.
Michael, you're an expert on One Nation, and you're an expert on the nationalist scene here in Australia. Do you see a competent policy actor or competent policy party that would fix and address some of these national security issues? One Nation or Fraser's new party or any of them. Corey's party's obviously dissolved, but it's changing.
Yeah, no surprises there. Excuse me, sorry. I don't know how much I can actually say on this. They're
But you know their
suffice it
party
to say,
platforms.
I know some of their party platforms. What surprised me, incidentally, is, and I'm going to actually come out and say it here, the United Australia Party, Clive Palmer's UAP, actually had a really good policy manifesto, but they didn't talk about it with anyone because somebody advised Clive that it was a bad idea. So, Clive only got 3% when he should have, which he would have gotten 10 times that had he actually released the policy. It was called the Road to National Prosperity. It was a whole manifesto that was written basically how to fix the economic problems and not so much the social problems. But the view of the Road to National Prosperity was that the social problems would evaporate once the economic problems were fixed. Anyway, I digress. So basically, in terms of actual policies to fix,
So because Pauline, do you think Pauline?
I
Do
don't
you
think
think?
any party's got it completely right. I think Pauline and Fraser and Clive will probably have the best policy platforms, but that's not really saying much considering how much work we have to do. Now, myself, as you know, obviously, I wrote an article pointing out 10 things, a minimum of 10 things that needed to be done to put Australia back in the black and revamp Australia so that we wouldn't have to be worrying about food on our tables, roofs over our heads, and money to pay electricity bills or energy itself. But only a few people have actually taken heed of that, and they're usually very small voices in the major parties.
What's more of a crisis? The debt crisis, which is going to be repaired in the next month, a year or so, back in the black, or these petroleum prices?
Honestly, as much as I'm concerned about debt, because I am very much anti-Keynesian in terms of my economics, the petrol prices, the oil crises, we've had a few over months. Every time Saudi Arabia decides to behead someone, or every time Iran decides to flip the bird at the US, the oil will spike. It will go back down, but then it'll spike, it'll go back down, it'll spike and go back down. It's like, oh, for goodness sake. I remember, petrol was recently, only a couple of weeks ago, petrol was about $1.70 just for, in Brisbane, mind you, for 91 unleaded 91. And you had your 98 unleaded, your 98 octane unleaded at almost $2 a litre. Diesel was about $1.65 per litre, or thereabouts. The good thing
with a good strategic petroleum reserve, what would mean is every time those prices got around $2, you just pump a little in. And those prices can fall about 30 cents. I mean, the government is ripping us off. I mean, there's huge tax excise on tobacco, alcohol, and petrol. Right, that's the other big one.
We pay the most petrol excise in the world. I can't think of any other country, with the possible exception of maybe Norway, that pays as much excise on petroleum or diesel as we do in Australia.
Mm.
I mean, you go to the Arab states, they're what, 22 cents per litre for oil. 22 cents per litre. Think about it, 22 US cents per litre.
That's nothing, man.
It's exactly. And, with car technology improving, with even internal combustion engines improving where you don't require nearly as much fuel as you used to, well, it's cheap to run your car.
Mm.
Even if you fill up your tank, it's cheap to run your car. You can run it longer and further. Get a lot more mileage than you would have done, say, even 10 years ago. Even America, they pay, what, $1 per gallon? And how many litres are there in a gallon? I think it's like 3.14.
Yeah,
I believe something like that. I'm not quite sure of the metric to imperial conversion rate. Point is, if you let's say 1 gallon is 3 litres, that's 34 cents a litre.
I'd pay that. I'd pay that every day of the week. that price is collapsing, and they have a strategic petroleum reserve in their back pocket. So they're laughing at us. They're laughing at us.
And now they've actually, they've brought it to the front pocket now. That's the thing. That's what Trump has done. Trump is very good for domestic America. I mean, I know a lot of people will probably hate me for saying this, but Trump is actually a lot better a president than I expected.
Michael,
and he's doing a lot of good for America domestically.
Michael, so Australia is like an intermittent agricultural power because we've stuffed up the environment here. We've stuffed up the Murray-Darling because no one listened to our sensible policies. No one did anything right on it. The MDA or whatever it is, the Greenies got a hold of the Murray-Darling and now it's stuffed. It's ruined forever. Now, well, not forever. We can recover, but it'll take a lot of work to undo the damage. So it's made... The Bradfield scheme is I was going to ask you about that. So actually... You go. Just tell the people about Bradfield scheme.
Okay, the Bradfield scheme is, for those of you who don't know, it is a plan to have a series of dams and weirs, an irrigation system throughout Queensland on the Murray-Darling, to ensure not only extensive carriage of water. That's not the right word. The carrying of water from where it was most
abundant.
Thank you. Sorry, it's I'm just
I think I might get Fraser. I think I might get Fraser ending on this to talk about this as well because Fraser, you know, we're friends and he might come on the show. And if you want, I'll try and get you on that show because go on about the Bradfield scheme because this is a big policy option of his.
Yes, absolutely. No, the Bradfield scheme is a good scheme. It was actually conceived in the 1940s or the 1950s, but it was shelved because they didn't want to expend so much money at the time. And I don't know if this was a state government decision or a federal government decision. The thing is, the state government could do it if they had the backbone to do so. They could actually do it themselves. They don't need Canberra to say, "Yeah, go ahead, do it." They could have actually done it, but it was ruled untenable at the time. Anyway, these days we have the technology now to make it economically viable to build the Bradfield scheme. I would actually argue, and Fraser may say the same thing as I do, or he may say something even different. He may have an even better idea than I do on how to fix the water shortages chronic throughout North and Central Queensland and Western Queensland. But we've got the technology now. I would say it is not economically viable to not build it. It is economically viable to build it. It is economically not viable to not build it.
So we're stupid if we don't build it.
Yeah, we're chronically stupid if we don't build it. I was probably going to be a lot.
And it's very popular. Fraser zoomed from nothing to 40,000 plus votes. On this, not just this issue, on a lot of issues, but as a key economic and security measure, the Bradfield scheme was very much at something at the heart. When he went around to all the different towns and communities and talked about this, he always said, Bradfield scheme, and the crowd went nuts. The crowd said, yes, we understand, we need this for our security, for prosperity, and posterity, because without it, because what I was going to ask you before you mentioned that, thank you very much, Michael, for mentioning the Bradfield scheme. Because Australia, because of the dismal state that the Greens have put us in, the country is now an intermittent superpower in agriculture. We could have at one stage been an agricultural superpower, and now they've shoved that from us. And a lot of people think that there was a lot of like Sam Destiari, how he was in with Chinese and stuff like this. I'm not saying anything I'm not commentating on that. But what I'm saying is people were thinking that there's money flowing in from country X to parties, left-leaning parties, country party Y. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying this is a theory. I'm not going on and I'm not accusing anyone of everything. I'm not saying Sam Destiari did anything. I'm not going anywhere there. But the theory is...
he was actually found to have acted
Yeah, but I don't want the left to pick this up and say and sue me for saying that I've said that Sam Dacieri has done something he hasn't. I'm trying to make it very clear that this is the theory, that it's country X, which doesn't exist, and money flowing to left-leaning parasitical parties here in Australia, and they have purposely destroyed the Murray-Darling to make us an intermittent agricultural power, because the north of Australia is looking very strong in the next coming decade or so. We should have very strong agricultural prosperity up there, but the South has been absolutely devastated, and it might come online and it might disappear, and it might come online and it might disappear over time. We don't know. But my point is that it's being devastated. We can't compete. But if we could get something like the Bradfield scheme up and running, and if we could get an excess of food, would you be happy with sacrificing food security for energy, for converting it to energy, or would you rather use that food to export to a starving world, which is coming at the collapse of Bretton Woods?
It's not a zero-sum game still. We can have food security and fuel security as well. We don't need to trade one for the other. We don't need to convert our any surplus food stocks that we have into biofuel. We don't need to do that. I mean, there could be an argument made for it, considering how precarious our current fuel security situation is. But that's just a remedy for the symptoms. That's not a cure for the cause. You need the cure for the cause. You need to build the energy security. As for food, yes, we need to ensure that we have food security as well, and that we export less than we do. We need to make sure that all of our people are fed before we export overseas. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should turn off exports altogether. Absolutely.
No more Irish potato famines.
Well, yeah, fortunately, we've never had that, thank goodness. We've never had any potato famines here, thank goodness.
Well, I say that because the English were exporting potatoes at the same time the Irish were starving, and that's what some of these free traders would say. They would say, oh well, if the market wants, we can make more money by exporting, even if our population is starving, because we'll make money from it. I'm not saying that, and you're not saying that. You're saying what I'm saying. We're both agreeing is we have to put our people first, even if it hurts us in the market a little bit, by feeding them first. Yes.
Exactly. Well, there's not going to be any market if we're all dead from starvation. Oh, is there?
Well, that's what they did in the potato famine.
Here, but come on, let's think about it. How can you have a market if you don't have consumers? Without food, you don't have consumers. Without consumers, you don't have a market. It's that simple.
So put Australia first in terms of food security and energy security.
Exactly. We once we've helped ourselves, then we can help other people. But if we can't help ourselves, how can we help anyone else? It's like as much as I hate to quote Dr. Kermit, Jordan B. Peterson, fix yourself, then fix your community before you even think about trying to fix the world. Charity begins at home. It's
Absolutely.
A more succinct way of putting it.
Absolutely, and we're moving into an age, an economic age, whether people like it or not, whether the left likes it or not. The other countries, the superpowers around the world, are moving away from each other. They're becoming nationalist, and if the left thinks that it wants to move into a more internationalist mode, okay, if it wants to become more benevolent at a time that everyone's becoming less, then these people are literally the definition of suicide. I can't say that on YouTube. Left loonies. Hopefully that didn't cut us off. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I will probably say one thing. I don't think the Greens are actually intelligent enough to willfully set out to sabotage our food security and our environmental security just by... I don't think they have the intelligence to willfully do it. They just do it because they don't think things through. They're like, yay, let's save the trees. And let's, without realizing how much will cripple the timber industry, without how much will cripple farming, and so forth and so forth. So, the road to hell is paved with good intentions still. The Greens have a lot of good intentions, but if their policies were followed through to their logical conclusions, it would be very bad for everyone.
Do they really have good intentions, or do they know what they're doing? And
I don't think they know what they're doing. I think they're too stupid.
I think they're malevolent.
Hmm?
I think they're malevolent. Yeah, malevolent.
Oh, there would be a few who would be. Don't get me wrong, but I don't.
What about Richard Di Natale? Would you go to a bar with Richard Di Natale and have a drink? I mean, would you trust that guy not to? You know what I mean?
Would I trust him not to?
I don't know. You know, make up an image in your head. I don't want to get thrown off YouTube for hate speech or whatever.
Well, if you ask me about Andrew Bartlett, I would probably tell you to use the censor button, the bleep button. No, but seriously, sorry. All jokes aside, the problem is that the people who vote for the Greens generally have good intentions because they don't understand the nature of the policies, the logical conclusions of those policies.
The vicar's daughter.
In a manner of speaking.
Yeah, sorry, continue, yeah.
It's... Yeah, you think you're doing good by voting for a party that says, oh, we should save the environment, let's preserve the environment. Well, of course we want to protect the environment. Of course we want to preserve it. It's not like the Liberals wake up every day and say, I'm going to chop down some more trees to burn the environment. We're not going to trash the planet. We're not going to trash the... Well, they don't want to trash the planet. I can't think of anyone who wants to trash the planet. Interestingly enough, though, there is only a short distance from green to red in terms of socialism and in terms of authoritarianism. And you actually look at regimes like the People's Republic of China, a notionally communist regime, they have the world's worst environmental record whatsoever.
So did the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
They destroyed whole lakes. Remember, there was a lake, like Baikal or something, and it's gone now. It doesn't exist anymore. There's just a bunch of boats that are sitting on sand.
That's right. Because they don't think things through. They don't realize the ramifications. They don't have policy development the same way the Liberal Party used to, or even the Labour Party used to a lesser extent. And these days, you know, people like you and I saying stuff like, we need the Bradfield scheme at a minimum. We need a 10-point plan to restore Australian prosperity and respectability. We get ignored because, you know, we don't get any airtime on the mainstream media.
No, and we thank all the supporters and the audience, the sophisticated audience that's always coming here and watching this. And I mean, I don't want them to agree with everything I say or everything that you say or anything that our guests say. I want them to be free-thinking, spirited people because that's what we want to encourage: high human capital, high IQ individuals in this society. We don't want drones. The right doesn't want drones. We don't want mindless people that go, like the NPC meme. We don't want that, okay? We want people who come out and say, hey, I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. And here's the reasons, and here's the facts, and here's the logic. And I guess Ben Shapiro has stolen that whole consumer market of facts and logic. But the right doesn't encourage this NPC meme type fashioned behavior, and we want free thinking, innovative, great people who are always ready to excel and always ready to press against the current.
Exactly. The thing is, we want people to know how to think, not what to think.
Beautifully put.
That's the most important thing. And that's the most important thing. I lament for a lot of the Gen Z, the Zoomers, as they're called, people born after 2000, who are, how many of them are actually taught how to think? I mean, you see schools these days as institutions of indoctrination rather than institutions of intellectual development and critical thinking. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, but I do wonder. I mean, I have a very young friend of mine. I won't reveal her identity on here, but she shares stuff without thinking. She almost shares stuff in a knee-jerk reaction. I think to myself, why? Why are you doing this? This doesn't affect you. This doesn't concern you. You're looking at something. You're looking at a massive problem. When you're
Yes,
all the way
so
down
it's crowd behavior, and this is what socialists and communists want. They want everyone to follow along in the crowd and become uniform, not only in what they dress and wear and think, but also in not only what they wear and dress and in what they dress and wear and own, but also in the way they think and what they share and what they. There's millions of people right now who are watching. I don't know. Australia's Got Talent or America's Got Talent or something, which is total bread and circuses, total disruptive, degenerate, not degenerate, but total stupid behavior, entertainment, and we've got an oil crisis here that could leave the economy in peril, and instead of marching up and down the street about this sort of stuff, the people are out there and they're saying, oh, we're Extinction Rebellion, which is most probably MI5 or something like that, because Jeremy Corbyn was the first person to ever name the Extinction Rebellion. I was watching Parliament when he did it, and he said, oh, I've got all these Extinction Rebellion people on my flank. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? It's Extinction Rebellion. And then suddenly the streets were filled with Extinction Rebellion, and suddenly they're in Brisbane, and suddenly they're... So they're getting money from somewhere. And I mean, it's Jeremy Corbyn is the epicenter of that. I don't... maybe. I'm not saying that's the truth, but anyway, look... We're running out of time, Michael, but look, let's go back to the start. So we were right. ABC was wrong. This oil crisis is coming if the Australian government continues to ignore their obligation, security obligation.
And I'm actually going to take that one step further, Steele, and say it is already too late. I'm actually going to say that. The only hope that we have is if the government now decides to say, stuff the Labor Party, stuff the Greens, this is a national security matter, we've got to do it right now. Even then, we might not have enough time to fix it. But it'll at least mitigate the fallout if we do this now, if we start doing it right now.
It's our economy. It's our whole economy. Our whole economy is built off petrol. If you own a car, you know what we're talking about. Okay, if you've ever been in a car, if you've ever seen a car, you understand what we're talking about. Trucks drive Australia. We love truckies. I love truckies. Truckies are the best, right? Everyone loves truckies. It's because they move the goods and services that keep this whole country running. And their jobs, the prime ministers and things will shake their hand and say, "We're looking out for you, buddy," but they're not. They're not. They're lying.
The governments of both persuasions have majorly let down our freight drivers on roads and in rail, and in air too, for that matter. It's air freight as well. You know, they've let us down. Well, not us, because I'm not a freight driver, but
yeah, but you're part of the Australian experience.
Oh yeah, we all are. We're all part of the Australian experience. And this is the thing. We've got to realise that if we don't take these steps, we are majorly screwed.
Like a Smythe?
It'll be a lot worse. We'll be screwed a whole lot worse if we don't actually start taking those steps now. Because, like I said to you at the beginning, people have actually pointed this out before us. Even people occasionally running for the ABC have pointed this out. Fairfax has covered it. News Corp has covered it. The United States Studies Centre, based at the University based in Sydney, has covered it. People have warned about it, but people have ignored it.
Ignored it, yeah.
We can't afford to ignore it anymore.
Well, they wrote this one day after we had a chat, Michael, so I'm pretty sure they're watching this show. I'm certain they're watching this show.
Well, they ought to.
Michael, we got a minute left. Have a last comment. What would you like to say about anything?
I think we, so far, have managed to be very lucky. But our luck as a nation is running out, and we need to make sure that we take steps to be less reliant on luck and more reliant on our own enterprise. And it needs to be guided in the national interest as well.
Yeah, very profound. All right, Michael. Hey, thank you very much for coming on Detonation once again. Unshackled.net, the Unshackled.net. Check that out, and more episodes of Detonation coming your way. I'm actually going to be talking to a gentleman from South Africa. He's an expert on the South African crisis, on the white genocide, and the other things that are happening there, the farm murders, and all that sort of stuff. So if you're in the playlist, it'll be in the next one. If you're subscribe and click the bell if you want to see that live. It might be happening tonight or maybe early this morning or tomorrow. I'm not sure, whenever this gentleman gets in line. So if you're in the playlist, it's the next one. If you're watching live, sub, bell, done. All right, thank you, Michael, once again. You're a busy man and it's hard to catch you, but your insights are always valued here in Detonation.
Thanks, Steele.
Thank you very much, Michael Smythe.